This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. When a volcano erupts, volcanic glass forms when the viscous lava extruded from the volcano cools rapidly. This glass is an igneous rock and is named Obsidian. Much like that lava, my guest today helps her clients shape their lives into the rock of their dreams. She helps them learn the skills, mindsets, and behaviors needed to perform at their peak, helping them understand who they are meant to be, and how to become it. She is the CEO of Obsidian Transformation Strategies. Please welcome Diana Taylor. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. That was a beautiful intro.
Oh, you're welcome. I saw you smile when I got to the igneous rock part.
I knew where you were going. I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome that he did that. So
it was interesting to me. For some reason, the name, I was like, what does that name mean? And so when I Googled it, I found that and I thought, well, you know, with what you do with people, it's kind of similar. So I am interested in, since we're on that topic, in the name of your business and finding that term.
I think that it's so interesting that you started with that description, because it's actually what I did when I was looking for the name of my business. So I'm a self-proclaimed, I like to call myself like a modern hippie. So I'm into crystal stones, things of that nature. And when I thought about like what I wanted to offer to the world and what my impact was going to be, the name and the stone Obsidian really, really stood out for me. It's considered like a truth-enhancing stone, and I'm really all about making sure that people discover the truth of themselves. And I thought it was just such a great way to kind of link the two, and that's what I did.
I need to get myself an obsidian stone.
Yeah, it's supposed to bring you like clarity and clear your confusion and really bring the truth of who you are. It helps you understand who you truly are, and it was just a perfect match for me. So
it is, and they're beautiful stones. The pictures on Google that I saw, they're really, really pretty.
Yes.
So taking a step back from all of that, because it took a journey, to make the relationship to the volcano, just like it takes a long time for that volcano to erupt and for that lava to flow and cool and turn into that beautiful stone. You share a similar journey in that you were like a sleeping volcano. You spent a lot of time reading and grew up in the Midwest. And so I'm very interested in that. You mentioned that books were your escape, and I'm very interested in how you got turned on to reading and what you were escaping from.
Yeah, I love books. I still to this day am a huge book reader. I very rarely watch television just because books, I just like to be able to get into that world and that mindset. But I didn't actually have a really happy childhood. There was a lot of abuse, there was a lot of neglect, and part of that meant that I needed an escape a lot of the time. And my mother, funny enough, she actually was a book reader, and she loved romance books. And so all throughout the house, there would be romance books, and I enjoyed reading from a child. So I'm reading the cereal box, I'm reading the newspapers or whatever comes in the mail. But eventually it wasn't enough, and I started reading her romance books. I snuck them because I wasn't old enough to be reading them at the time. And lucky they were much more PG than they are today. So
at least the ones your mom was reading.
That the ones that my mom read, they weren't that traumatizing. But starting to get into books, I started learning just basic things. I started learning geography because they'd write about different countries that they visit or places that they'd go. I started learning other words, so my vocabulary grew. And then I started thinking, oh, well, there's other types of books I can read than just romance books. And so I just started loving the library. And while I had a bad home life, one thing that was never taken away from us was our ability for school and schoolwork and extracurricular activities. So when I say I joined everything and I sat at the library as much as I could, I was always doing whatever I could to be out of the household, and being into books helped me be out of the household as much as possible.
Mm. And then you went from the romance novels to self-development. Self-development is something that not everybody's drawn to, right? Because entertainment and history, right. I would think are probably the biggest categories are entertainment and history in the library. The self-development section is growing today, but is not always highlighted. But you were drawn to it. What drew you there?
I was. You know what? I think the biggest thing was that the idea that you could make yourself better. Just the idea of that was something that really captured my attention, because in my family, I have a huge family, but everybody stays in the same circumstances. There's not been a lot of growth or change within the family, and I didn't know that there was an option to do something more. So when I started, and I've actually learned about self-development from a romance book. And so when I actually started looking at self-development books, I realized that, wow, I have the opportunity to become more, or to expand myself or my environment. And I didn't use those words when I was 10 and 11, but that was the concept that really drew me into reading self-development. So through middle school and high school, I just kept trying to find ways. How can I be better? How can I do something better? And it wasn't schoolwork that I got into. It was the self-development books that I got into. Schoolwork was easy. It was the extra stuff that I wanted to work on, how not to think the same way, how not to get upset as quickly, how not to, fall deep into, oh, this is a traumatic experience and I'm just going to sink into it. It really helped me escape all of that and just know that there was something more for me out there in the world.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a couple things here that are interesting to me. One, typically on my show, when I'm speaking with a leader like yourself, we're talking about family history, and we're talking about mentors and people that they may have learned from or be inspired by. And for you, you were inspired by, I suppose, the opposite of like, I'm inspired to not be what I'm seeing around
me.
Which is a very interesting take for a young girl to have. And then the other thing that I'd love to hear you expand on a little bit is what self-development books or people were you following as a middle schooler, as such a young child? Because I can't imagine knowing of any when I was in middle school.
So it's funny because I didn't necessarily know of anyone to be like, oh, I'm going to go look this person up. It always was just a curved road that led me from one place to another, and I would just find people at different times. So what you said was so spot on, though, about my inspiration was to not be like everyone else, because I saw what the outcome was, and I just didn't want that life for myself. In some ways that hurt me, and in some ways that helped me. But overall, I feel very positive about the fact that happened. But when I started reading, I was reading a romance book, and they talked about their self-help in the book and what they were doing to like become a better person, and how they were not dating, and they were reading self-help books, and they named some people. And so they named like Wayne Dyer, and they named like Bob Proctor. And so I was like, oh, who are those people? So then I would go to the library, because I look younger, but I'm definitely Dewey Decimal Symbol time, So I'd go to the library and I would find out, something from these people. And then once my librarian started noticing I was interested, then she would like tell me about other books. And so it just became this compound effect of me getting kind of spread around different people and their different thought processes. I did read some like autobiographies, because there would be people like an Oprah or someone that you'd want to learn from and see how they changed their life and what they did. And it just has such an impact on me that I didn't even realize until I got older that, oh, this was what I was supposed to be doing this whole time. It found me. So.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about self-help books, or even just that industry as a whole, and podcasts or videos, YouTube, the whole industry as a whole, and in the self-help industry, I'll air quote it, in that they all reference each other. Everybody references each other, and it's like it is a community. Everybody learns from each other, and everybody kind of gives credit too. It's like, Tony Robbins gives credit to Jim Rohn, and all these different, they all kind of follow the same. And I always kind of reference back to, I follow the Daily Stoic, to the Stoics. And then they do the same thing there of Marcus Aurelius and all the same. And so it's like, what I love about what's in these books, the Wayne Dyers and the Bob Proctors and the Tony Robbins, is that they all have different styles, but they're all kind of giving the same message. And what's nice about that is it feels like there's a truth to it, right? That if it's been going on for hundreds, thousands of years, if different civilizations have talked about some of the principles that they talk about in their books and in their writings and in their speeches, then there's got to be truth to it, and there's something to believe in. And you do that in your work, and you bring that out in people. I'm interested in the impact that Oprah played in your life as a young Black female, right? And as you mentioned, having some trauma in your childhood, I'm sure that there was a lot of correlations with you and Oprah. So you brought her up and her autobiography. I'm interested in how that impacted you.
Yeah, I think that you see the slogans and there's memes about representation matters, but it's really true. Because even in the self-help industry, when I first started reading about it, I didn't see a lot of me. I didn't see a lot of young Black females, or even a lot of women. It was very male-driven for self-help for quite a long time. I'm very happy it's starting to kind of mix up and change and become more diverse, but it was very heavily driven by men. And so Oprah, even though she was building her life and building her brand with her show and everything still when I was growing up, she still started having these concepts of just like a higher consciousness, being more self-aware, developing herself to become better, learning from others, understanding communication and the importance of it. And so all of those aspects of the things that she was doing, it really appealed to me because, and I know that you do a lot with communication. Communication is like the heart of everything, right? And relationships, and you have to communicate to have a great one. So just seeing her and seeing the power that she had, seeing her perseverance, even through all the trauma that she had, it's good to know that someone's been in similar shoes and that they are moving forward, because it gives you the hope that you can do the same.
Yeah, I've read autobiographies. I have not read hers. The ones that I typically read have to do with business. The one for me that stands out is like Richard Branson's autobiography. And I relate to what you're saying in that, he talks about family and business and bringing the two together. And to your point, and I'm like, if Richard Branson can do it and he's got like 50 companies, then I could find a way. And I think of the line that so many people talk about is that like, look, Richard Branson, or people talk, the quote is more of Warren Buffett has the same amount of hours in the day than I do, right? And so, if they can do it, then we can do it. So it does feel good to hear that. The other cool thing that I like that you brought up is that you found self-help through romance novels. I like that because I think that so often we're driven and we work so hard and we have this idea that life is nothing but work, and we must work really, really hard. And when we take the time off to enjoy ourselves, that's almost kind of looked in a negative light. And Grant Cardone is one of those we'll put up there as a workaholic who will be like, I will not waste a moment of my time. but so much good can come out of entertainment too, right? You know?
Yes. And even Grant Cardone, who's definitely a self-proclaimed workaholic, also speaks about how important it is for him to spend time with his family, for him to have video game day with his brother, for him to do different things because it helps him ensure that he can be successful in the other areas of his life. We're taught a lot that it's only work, and that's the only thing that we can focus on. But we're human beings, and we have all these different aspects of ourselves. And if we don't address all of them, then we're going to fall short somewhere. And I think that romance, and to this day I still do have a love of romance novels because I just never grew out of that. But romance novels for me are still my escape. And then I still learn from them, and I bring that joy or that entertainment, my engagement, to my work. I bring that to the people that I interact with instead of it just being, it's only work, it's only business, you can't talk to me about anything else. I'm not that serious. I like to make serious money, but I'm not that serious of a person. So I think that, yeah, I need the entertainment in my life.
Yeah, and it's all intertwined, and we can learn so much from entertainment. I mean, we just look at podcasts. I mean, the way that I got into podcasting was through entertainment, through self-development, and I got into it, and so many other things. So I think about when you just said video games, and I'm like, when you think about the founders of Twitch, they were playing video games, and they're billionaires now. They turned it into a business. That's how a lot of it happens. And so speaking about kind of like extracurricular activities and turning them into a business, you were kind of like the self-proclaimed advisor for all of your friends. So growing up, you took this advisor role. Could you share with us what that was like? What was the circle of friends that always leaned on you?
It's so funny because I'm the only person when I was growing up that was into self-help, right? So of all my friends, nobody's reading self-help books. Everybody's just, doing their thing. But I knew that I didn't want to stay in my circumstances. And so I was always reading. I was always wanting to learn something about something. I was always curious so that I could figure out my way out. And so they knew that I was doing that. And when they would have an issue, my response would be this way, or maybe I'm not, I don't get upset as easily. Just different things they would notice about me. So they start asking me for advice. And it was never serious until I got older. Like when I was in middle school and high school, it'd be like, do you think he likes me? But what if he says this to this person? And so it would be conversations like that. But as I got older and I started like working and being more in the corporate environment, then people would ask me more about their career choices or what they might want to do, or if they wanted to start a business, or if they should leave, or if they should move, or different things. And I was just that person. And I enjoyed the role. And it just became what I was known for. They're like, oh, and it was always a joke. My mom, she joked about it. Oh, you should be a psychiatrist, because all my friends would come to me with all their problems. My friends would be like, oh, no, my therapist, Diana. Like, that's the title that they would put on my name way before I did anything around coaching or helping people that way.
There's a major distinction between being a therapist and being a coach. I'm interested if you could share that with our audience.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the biggest confusions. I always say the easiest way for me to help people think about it is your therapist helps you figure out what in the past made you who you are. And your coach helps you figure out who you are so that you can move towards your future. And because of that, there's that little crossover on like who you are and where that comes from. But that's the way that I like to describe it, because you're going to focus a lot on what happened when, why did this happen, what did you think when it happened with your therapist. And I think that that's really important work. And I think that people do need to make sure that they take the time to kind of deal with anything that might have come up, any traumas that they may or may not know that they have. But when you're ready to move forward, when you're done kind of just understanding what got you to where you are today and you want to go to your next level, that's when you decide you want to find a coach. Whether it's in a sport, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your life, that's when you decide you want to coach, is because you want to move forward and you want to go to your next step or your next level.
Yeah, and that's I love the analogy. It's very good. I mean, it's not even an analogy, but it's really very clear as to how one can help the other, but also, and how you can use both at the same time, which is very helpful. So you were so you moved on from like the advisor role with your friends, and you go into corporate America, and you kind of got also the same name. So before before we get into your story of your coaching business, which, came out of working in corporate America and then deciding to quit your job, you were working in corporate America, and you kind of were tagged with that. What was that experience like? And maybe how was it different from the experience now as an entrepreneur and having your own coaching business?
Yeah. So in corporate America, of course, you have your own roles. And so a lot of the times when I was doing coaching, it was coming from more of a mentoring standpoint. People would want to ask advice for their career, getting a promotion, doing well in their current role, things of that nature, not being burnt out or getting rid of the feelings of being burnt out. That would be a lot in my corporate role. And so in corporate America, and just, I've never been one of the people, I laugh because I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I was never one of the kids that actually had their first job and they were like a waitress or anything. When I was 17, my first job was the Census Bureau. And so it's always been.
Yes, I perked up.
It really was. And then I used to work for the IRS. So I always had these kind of jobs in a very corporate environment since I was a teenager. It's always been that way. And so I learned in a way that a lot of my friends didn't get to, because they did spend a lot of their time in retail or in, the restaurant business. So when they got to corporate America, they didn't understand the dynamics or the power plays. And so people would come to me for advice for that, because I had been around it a little bit longer. And so then I started having supervisory roles. And so now I'm helping people become better employees. And very, very early on, the thing that was a friction between me and corporate America was that everybody was forced to fit into these molds. Whatever the mold that business wanted you to be in to be their ideal employee, you all had to fit into this mold. And I don't know if it's because I'm a Leo or what, but I just rebelled against that. I was just like, why can't I just be me? Like, why do I have to be this person? Why do I have to act like this? Like, why can't I just be me? And so authenticity became like a really big passion for me. So in corporate America, if I'm on a panel or people ask me to speak at an event, I'm very much speaking about authenticity, probably I'm sure my senior leaders didn't love the fact that I was saying, you have to be you. You have to be true to yourself. You have to understand who you are. And maybe this isn't the best place for you. Maybe you find out that you need to be somewhere else. I'm sure that message wasn't well received by my senior leaders, but it was very well received by the people listening. And so I ended up mentoring more and coaching more. And I'd have this huge calendar of time where I'm working like 12-hour days, because I was spending time mentoring people in addition to my regular work. And that's kind of what got me into coaching. I was like, I'm doing this, but am I doing it right? Am I really helping these people the way that I should be helping them? Is it making the impact that it needs to make? And that's why I decided, like, let me get my coaching certification. Let me learn like a true framework on coaching someone and moving them to their next level. And I still stayed in corporate America once I did that, but I just wanted to make sure I was doing it the right way so that I was actually helping people. And that's kind of where the start of the coaching came from.
So in corporate America, was your role to coach and train? And no, what was the job title or role?
So I used to work for a very, very large company, and they had like multiple departments. It was like 10,000 plus employees, so tons of departments. So I moved around I can't say I had a specific job title, but change management was a huge one for me. Project management. I was a business analyst. I did premium servicing. So I had a lot of different roles, and in each role I'd have like a team. Maybe I worked for it was a financial company, so credit cards. So if you were I'm trying to speak without speaking too much, and it's very funny, so I'm just going to say it. So
Go ahead.
So like if you had like a credit card with Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, right? Or a co-branded card with, an airline or something, then I would manage the partnerships, or my team would manage the partnerships or relationships between those companies and our company. So I had a lot of different roles. A lot of it touched people, though. At the heart of every role that I had, the impact to the people was something that was always a KPI for me. So how did it impact? What was the result? What was the engagement level? Did it have any detriment to their talk time or their this or their that? Anything that I did was all tied to people. And because of that, people were very important to me, and making sure that they were seen as people was very important to me. And that's why I always enjoyed the mentorship aspect, to make sure people were enjoying what they were doing and why.
So you took it upon yourself to do the mentoring and the coaching. So that's the kind of the culture that you built within your teams then. So one team didn't look like the other then.
One team did not look like the other, and the leaders did not look like the leaders. Even in my last role before I left corporate America, one of my peers on the team very admittedly said that she hates having one-to-ones with her people because she doesn't feel like she needs to talk to them that often. That was just like her perspective, and I was like, what? I just thought it was just so strange, because some people become leaders because they got promoted into a role, not because that's their natural ability. And they don't know how to interact or deal with people. And so I would volunteer I'll do a one-to-one with your person. I'll talk to your person and work with them.
Wow. Yeah, it's certainly different, especially what's interesting to me about that, what you just said there too, about promoting to management is like, it's so odd because it happens so often, but like when you're promoted to management, your job is to manage people. And so to me, it only makes sense that we would learn how to work and engage and motivate and listen to people. But it so often doesn't happen. It's usually the top producer or whatever it is. And, that's just the way some businesses are run, and we'll leave that there. What I'm more interested in, because we can't solve those problems today, what I'm more interested in is going to be odd for you, but why did you decide to go work at the Census Bureau and the IRS out of, like, in your youth? Like, I mean, my first job was like a lifeguard.
So it wasn't my first job. Okay. It was technically my third. My very, very first job was McDonald's. Okay. Like a lot of people. Right. So 15 McDonald's. But I couldn't work all the time because I was 15. 16, I worked at an amusement park, but it was seasonal because I'm from the Midwest and amusement parks aren't open all the time. But 17, that was the Census Bureau. And I was good at it. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I always...
But how did you find a job at the Census Bureau? They were recruiting 17-year-olds?
So listen, my life story is so like convoluted. You're going to be like, oh what, as I add things to this. So when I was 16, I dropped out of high school because of my home life. I ended up needing to work full time so that I could take care of my sister. Because we didn't have the family helping to take care of us. And that's why, technically I was 15 when I decided to drop out, but I was 16 when I officially did it. And so I knew that I was a nerd in school. I was always like top of my class in school. And I was the biggest regret for me dropping out, because my dream was to go away to college somewhere. Like, I just wanted to go far away and go to college. And I was a straight A student. I was a great test taker. Like, I knew I was going to be able to do it. But I had to drop out because my sister and I couldn't take care of the household. Like, the house we were living in, my mother at the time had Section 8, but she left us. And so we're in the house by ourselves, and the bills aren't being paid. The lights and things are being shut off. It's winter time and gas. It was just a hot mess. So I was like, okay, I got to work. So I got to drop out of school because I don't make enough money working part-time at McDonald's. And so I decided to go to Job Corps. And I don't know if you ever heard of Job Corps, but okay. So I decided to go to Job Corps so I could get a GED really quickly so that I can actually then work full-time. That was my goal. That was all I was trying to do. And in Job Corps, the program they had me in was the business program. And because I was a nerd, I tested out of my GED and actually high school. They let me test out for credits in like a month, but you have to be there a minimum amount of time. You have to be there like 6 or 8 months or something before they can say you can leave the program. So I kind of was just sitting there, and they found me the job at the Census Bureau. So the Job Corps actually got me the job at the Census Bureau, and there would be a van that would pick me up every day from Job Corps, take me to work, bring me back, and that was just my life for a few months. I had my sister living with someone. Any money I got from Census Bureau and Job Corps, I gave to the people taking care of my sister until I got out. And when I got out, then she came back and we were back together, and I was working and making sure she finished high school because she's my younger sister, and making sure she finished high school and did everything that she had to do. But Job Corps, that's why I got to the Census Bureau. And then once you work in a government job, it's easy to get the next one. So when the IRS was hiring, I was like, oh, I'll go apply for the IRS. And I'm from Kansas City, so we've got like the Federal Reserve and the IRS and the Census Bureau. All of those government buildings are there, so it was just easy to kind of move around.
That is an incredible story. So you essentially took care of your sister during your teen years. What, we talked about it earlier in terms of like you being inspired to not be, or I guess continuing the cycle around you, right? And we've talked about the romance novels and the self-help books helping you kind of break through that. But to me, there's something about some personal mindset that you had. What do you think kind of inspired that personal mindset inside of you? Like, what was that fire inside of you that wouldn't let your circumstances dictate your future?
Honestly, I think that once I was exposed to the fact that this didn't have to be my future, I was convinced that it would not be. There was no way that this was going to be my future because I know it doesn't have to be. And so once I knew that, it's actually really funny. Once I learned that was it. That was it for me. I knew that I could be better. I knew that I could do better. I've always known I always balance my conceited and my humble, but I always knew I was smart. I always knew that. And so I'm like, if I'm smart, then I can go do this and I can do that and I can do anything I want. So this does not have to be where I stay. And once I learned it, that was it.
I love that. And your sister went off to finish high school, and you were able to support her through that. And
she was valedictorian, and I was very proud of her. And she did a speech that I was her role model. So it was very emotional. We had a very emotional childhood. We're very close still to this day, and we're not that far apart in age. But I just wanted to make sure that we're not the same. I'm the middle child, and she was the baby. And so a lot of it, she took a lot harder. She didn't enjoy school. She didn't like doing things. She was very much, she was a rebel child. She was a wild child. So I felt like I had to take that responsibility to make sure that she could make it out of the circumstances as well. And I knew that I could bounce back from it. I knew that I could, okay, I'm dropping out, but I'm going to get my GED and then I'll go to college. Like I had the plan in my head, whereas I knew if something had to happen to her where she had to drop out, she might not ever, recover from it. And so I knew I could, and so I did. Earl
Nightingale talks about, any plan can happen if it's backed by determination. And it sounds like you just had that determination. I also love how you just believed in yourself and believed in this vision. And we're going to talk more about that too in your coaching and what you do. What's interesting though about this story too is like going now back to your corporate America days and right before you decide to open up your coaching business, you started experiencing, I'm assuming, similar feelings, right? Where this unhappiness, this feeling of like, I can do better, I can achieve more. And you went through kind of like your gremlins, right? You had to re-experience some of this to be able to break through all of that. Could you share some of that with us?
Yeah, and I'm very, very open and transparent about like that time in my life. So in corporate America, I was always a top performer. As I moved into leadership roles, I started struggling to continue to move. continuing to move up. And it's interesting now because at the moment while you're in it, you just don't understand. Like, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do better? Am I not good enough? And corporate America very much gives that environment of comparison and competition. So you always feel like because you're ranked, if you're not number one, then you're not as good. And because there's only so much to go around, you're taught a scarcity mindset because there's only so many roles and so many promotions and so many, so much we could do for salary and so much we can do for this. So you start absorbing that unconsciously and you don't realize it. And so as much as I was doing, personal development, as much as I was very, very heavy in making sure people stayed authentic to who they were, I was absorbing those mindsets. And around I don't know if it was like a perfect storm or what might have happened, but 2020, COVID, right? So I was in a long-term relationship. My ex-fiance and I called off our wedding a couple months before. COVID happened. And so now I'm alone throughout all of COVID. And then I'm working my butt off because all of a sudden diversity and inclusion become very, popular. It's seen, it's visible. So I'm volunteering to do a lot of diversity and inclusion work in my company, in my center. And I'm just like taking hits from so many different areas. And I don't recognize it. I'm just moving forward. I'm just going about my day. I'm just moving forward. And then one day it just all caught up with me. It just all caught up with me that for years, I'd known that I had a passion about helping people. I've known that I've had a passion about coaching. I've known that. And I always found an excuse within corporate America because you get comfortable. It's secure. It's a great job. You get good benefits. They're the people. You get used to seeing them all the time. And it's scary to step out on your own. And so I always made an excuse not to do it. I always found an excuse not to do something on my own. So when everything kind of built up on me, it just hit me. And I say this today. I went through a major depression. And I ended up having to take time off of work, everything, just to kind of get back to center. And I say that it was my soul's way of telling me that this wasn't going to work anymore. Like, you cannot do this anymore. And I wasn't listening before, but it made sure that I listened now. And so when I started getting back to myself, I started thinking about what caused this and what caused therapy? See, therapy's helpful. What caused this? What happened here? Why did you do this? What was going on? And where could this have come from? And I start realizing that I just stopped being aligned with making sure that I was having an impact, making sure that I was doing what I thought was purposeful work, making sure that I was helping like I wanted to help. I wasn't doing that anymore because I started focusing on making sure I could grow in the corporate world and move up the corporate ladder and make more money, which is always a positive. But there were just these things that I just stopped focusing on about myself and my internal self. And when it hit me. And I just came to realize, you know what? This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to do what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I quit.
Your core values didn't align, is what you're
not at all
telling us. You didn't quit without a plan. I know that for sure. There's something about you that tells me that you kind of had a plan in mind. And so my question is, you mentioned that while you were in corporate America, you were taking coaching courses. Do you care to mention any of those coaching courses that you took?
Yeah, I love my coaching certification. I recommend it to everybody.
Can I guess it?
So I went to IPEC, which is the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, and they were amazing. And I told everybody when I went through the program, I think it was $11,000 or $12,000 at the time. And when I went through the program, I was very much okay, I want to do this. I'm going to, get coaching clients, make my money back. But by the time I got to the end of it, I said, if I never coach a single person, this entire program was worth it because of what it did for me. It helps you align so much about yourself and understand how you see the world, how you see yourself, how you move in it, how you move with your energy, how you show up. I can't sing the praises enough of the program. And you also get coached during the program. And so while I had been in corporate America, we'd have, your leaders and people giving you sessions, but they don't really know what they're doing all the time. So it was my first time getting coached by somebody that was trained to be a coach. And it was so impactful. And I was just like, whoa, okay, this is it. This just made such a difference. And I kind of had a plan when I quit, because before I left corporate America, before any of this happened, I had gotten my certificate and I started coaching part-time. So I was already coaching people part-time, very much life mindset, prior to all of this happening. But it was, I wish I could explain and express with words that I just do not have how impactful that program was to my life. Not to me coaching, which I'm very grateful for, because I really love their methodology and the way that they kind of get to the heart of you to coach you. But just to me and my life, there were so many things that I became aware of about myself that I had no idea was holding me back. So many things. Some of them is embarrassing. I was like, what? I was doing that? Like, you just don't even realize.
So, are you ready, or are you willing to share any of your gales with us?
Ooh, you're scaring me. How did you know this? Did you look this up? Are you an IPEC coach?
When I was doing my research on you and went to your website, I started reading your website and I went, she's energy leadership. She's IPEC trained. Yep. So I have two for you. I was waiting to see when I can get your eyes going and your mind going. I didn't want to distract you too much. My coach, you were spot on in that. You said it earlier, in that when you as a person are ready to move forward in your life is when you step in as a coach, right? And for me, that's what happened to me about 2 years ago. Was I had a childhood, a very blessed childhood, and I think every one of us, no matter whether we were fortunate or unfortunate, have our own experiences. It's really our perception, right? And so I had my issues as a kid with my dad and whatever. And I mean, we all love each other and talk to each other all the time now. And I hope they listen to this podcast. They should support me. I'm just kidding. But so I had therapists and all that stuff. So I went through that. I was able to unravel a lot of that. But when I got into my corporate world, into the corporate world and into my journey and everything, I started feeling that lack of authenticity, that misalignment. And I was fortunate in that my networking circles, I met somebody who was a coach, and I didn't really understand what she did. But we had several meetings, and then we kind of like formed, kind of like an acquaintanceship, friendship kind of thing, from networking circles. And so I'd ask her questions just like people did with you, and she became like my little advisor friend. And eventually I needed her help. I knew that I was stuck. I was repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So that's when I had a great financial opportunity by being hired by a big insurance brokerage, and I was able to afford her services, and I hired Merit. And so she became my coach, and so she's an IPEC certified coach. And like I said, it's about 2 years ago. And then more recently, when I opened up my insurance agency, I knew that I wanted to bring what I had been learning from her and from others into my agency. And so very similar to what you were doing in corporate America, I want to do inside of my agency with my team and be able to support them the way that I'm supported. And so I ended up going through module 1. You just made me
so happy. High five.
High five.
It's such a powerful program, right? Like, I think that the power of it. You brought it into your agency and decided to become one yourself. So that's amazing. My gales. So you're done with your certification then, right?
No, I'm not fully certified. I actually just completed module 1 last week. So
I don't know if I want to spoil this for you. I'm not going to spoil it. So I won't share the experience of me finding out my gales, because you go through that process. I've
done the gremlin experience with my coach. I've done.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We've gone through a lot
of. Good. So as part of your mod 3, you're going to go through the gremlin experience with the class. And when I tell you that every last one of us was boohoo crying,
Oh, yeah.
like the entire room, we were just in tears, broken down. And it was a crazy, amazing experience because you never think to dig into those things. So at the time when I went through IPEC, I believe that my Gale was that I'm not smart enough. And the reason why I thought that was my Gale is because I have a very big history of if I don't have the knowledge of it, then I will not, I don't feel comfortable doing it. So I'd go get extra degrees and certifications and all kinds of things to make sure that I could offset this. And so at the time I was like, okay, well, I guess my Gale is helping me because I'm getting extra education, but it's also hurting me because I put everything to the side, or I'll procrastinate, or I won't step into doing something because I don't know or I'm not sure. Where a lot of people find success when they just make a decision and they act. And so I was not acting. And that was at the time what I thought. So last year, actually, when I went through everything and I'm at my bottom and I'm going through a depression, I started redoing my IPEC coaching for myself because I always keep a coach, but my coach wasn't IPEC certified. So they weren't necessarily taking me through the same things that I had learned or the process that I had gone through for core energy. And so I started going through it again myself because I got all my workbooks and all my everything. I started doing it myself, and I thought about my gremlin, and I realized that my gremlin was that I'm not lovable. And it was from a lot of the trauma from growing up for, being neglected or being abused or, all these different things happening. And so the extra schooling was not because I didn't think I was smart, because I've always known I was smart. It's because I was trying to prove my value to other people. And that way they would love me. And so I'm getting emotional because it's still very much a gremlin.
Me too.
And it's still very much a gremlin, but that's what I realized was happening is that because I think that I'm not lovable, let me do this so I can prove to people why I should be worthy of their love or their respect or their care or whatever the case might be. And so that's my gremlin. My other ones, my Gales, my assumptions, my beliefs, the biggest limiting belief that I still fight with, even within my business today, is that I don't deserve success. And it ties to my gremlin, which is I'm not lovable, right? Because I'm not valuable to someone. I don't deserve success in certain areas. And so I fight myself with unintentional self-sabotage. And the great thing I love about the IPEC program is it makes you more conscious. So I can see myself doing it. Like, oh, wait. And I can make a self-correction. It doesn't, I always tell people this, like knowing and being self-aware doesn't stop things from happening. It makes you conscious of it so that you can decide to do something different. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So that belief and that Gale are probably the two bigger ones that kind of stood out and impacted me the most. And then the others, I try to wait, is that true? Is this really what they're thinking? Is this what they mean? So the assumptions and interpretations very much easier for me to overcome, but the limiting belief and the the gremlin. Yeah. So those are hard ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So for our audience to know, GALES is the acronym for gremlins, assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs, which is what you kind of just went through there. Well, you did go through there. And what I'd love for you to just expand on for our audience too, and this is like the work that you do, is, in what you were saying there, I was formulating a question of, well, then how'd you overcome it, right? But then you said something that I think is even more important about how did you overcome it. But you said about being self-aware to consciously make a decision. And I'm interested if you could share or expand on that for everyone. Yeah,
I think that it is funny because this is an IPEC quote actually, but I probably won't say it exactly correct. But the best freedom or the biggest freedom that we have is the freedom of choice. And we are at choice all the time. So we get to choose how we show up, what we do, what we don't do, if we agree with something, if we don't, if we choose to see something the way that we've always seen it, or if we choose to see it in a different way. And that choice is what makes all the difference. But you can't be at choice if you don't know what's going on. if you don't know why things are happening, if you don't know why you're looking at it this way, if you don't understand, the beliefs behind whatever thoughts or actions that you're taking. And so that's a big portion of, I help people with their businesses, but we spend so much time on the mindset that it's amazing, because that's where our limits are. We only can excel as much as we believe we can. And so if we don't uncover those beliefs or those blocks that are kind of keeping us from wherever we're trying to go, then we'll never get there. And we'll never understand why. We'll just be frustrated or upset and not really truly have an understanding of what happened. And most of the time it's us. It's internal. We're our biggest problem.
Yeah. And, I love that, like how you articulated that, because so often people say, stop and think about it and stop and pause. And while that's helpful, that's just step one. Right? It's like stop and pause, right? But now analyze the decision and why you're making the decision. And
why.
The why, yeah, it's so helpful. What's also really cool, and I was so excited when I was reading up about you and checking everything out on your website, and I was like, oh, I know she's IPEC certified, but you didn't put the certification. You didn't put it on your website, so I was like, but I was like, no, it's too much. And then your Bruce Schneider quote, I was like, yep, that's it. She's IPEC certified.
She is.
So what's funny about it for me, I say this quote all the time. It's anonymous. It's a Chinese proverb. It's a quote, but it's like the teacher will appear when the student is ready.
I say that all the time.
and it applies to so many things, and it's used in so many different ways. But like I said, I just finished Module 1 last week, and so I spoke with my advisor, my IPEC advisor recently, early this week, and we were going over pricing, and it did go up, just not significantly, but a couple grand. And we're going over it, the different payment options, and I was like, well, I only signed up for Module 1 so that I could bring this awareness to my team. But I did get so much out of it. And I was like, and I would love to go through the whole certification process. So anyway, so I got off the phone with her and I was like, but I'm not sure if I really want to go through the whole process and make this investment and all this other stuff. And then I'm preparing for our podcast and I'm reading your bio and you're talking about how like, I would have paid double the amount. I would have done anything. It was, even if I never coached a day in my life. And you also just said it right here on the podcast, but you wrote it too. And I was like, man, I don't know. This is some powerful stuff right now happening. It's so amazing. And Mod 1 is great. I actually took a friend from work to Mod 1 with me, and they took that back to their team. And they still are like, I think I want to go through like they're still on the fence about wanting to go through the program or not, right? But Mod 2 and 3 are the ones that are going to give you all the tools that you get to bring back to people. Mod 1 is very much an awareness. So you're learning, you're seeing some basic techniques on how to coach. And I think it's great because you know how to acknowledge people and to validate and, you learn the basics. But 2 and 3 are where you really get the tools to kind of dig deep to the core of whatever's going on so that you can address it and help people move forward. And because it's all practiced on you, because in the program, you're getting a coach the entire time, and it's your peer, but they're being coached. And you'll be amazed at the insights that come out for you, the choices that you make. And then you can do this, and to know you can do the same for other people. It's incredible. I'm just going to say, I personally would recommend it 100 out of 10 to anybody that's considering going through a coaching certification. I genuinely would. It's so powerful. And you already have the where you're going to put it in place, but it's not going to just impact your team. It's going to impact your customers. It's going to start impacting how you show up. It's going to start impacting all of your other relationships. You're going to start looking at so many things differently that you're going to have the change in your life, and it's not going to be able to help but spread to others. So think about the investment. Yeah, it's funny.
Consider it.
You're right, because the first place we bring it is home. When you just said acknowledge and validate, I was thinking about my wife right after Mod 1, and I'm like, let me acknowledge and validate her. She's a school teacher, and so she came home and she always kind of like just downloads her day. And you normally I either try to come up with some solution or some answer or whatever it is. And to that day, I was like, let me just acknowledge it. Oh, so such and such happened. Okay, so such and such happened. I understand how you're feeling, honey. And she goes, thank you so much for listening to me. I was like, man, I just found
so taking it to work was the same. You did it at home. You're going to do the same thing at work. So I used to work for the department. So I'd be the senior level for if something had to get escalated, then it would end up coming to me. And so I started teaching people how to de-escalate calls. And I picked that, acknowledge and validate, biggest winner ever. I was like, sometimes people just want to be heard. They don't need anything but to be heard.
That's right.
They don't want you rebutting or challenging them or making them feel like what they're saying is not right. If you just acknowledge and validate, and you'd be amazed, like this is operations talk now, but like the talk time for our teams that managed escalations went down by 100 seconds.
Wow.
Because people started practicing acknowledging and validating. So talk about bringing it into work, because I did. Like, that was just one little skill that I started making everybody have to do, and talk time cut by 100 seconds, because now people, they're not venting anymore. They're just like, that's why I appreciate you guys, because you listen to me, or you do, like your wife said, thank you for listening. And there's no arguing. Nobody's getting cursed out. Nobody's, having to fight about different things. So it definitely works.
It's cool. Yeah. And the thing with it too is like, it sounds like it would take more time, but you just proved that it doesn't just by doing something like that. All throughout this experience, this journey that you've been on, you've been a leader. You've led in at home with your sister, in the corporate world, taking on roles that weren't even assigned to you, like just being like, I'm gonna mentor your team too. So you speak about leadership, and what I liked was that you kind of broke it down into different categories of situational leadership and servant leadership, and you use them in different ways. And I haven't really heard anybody speak about it the way that you do, because so often we hear people say, I lead by example, or I do other things, which are valid and wonderful. But I really like kind of like, I guess, the educational stamp that you put on it. And I'm interested if you could share a little bit more about those with us.
Yeah, I think that leading by example is always great, which then if we go back, this is why you have to be self-aware and why you have to make sure that you understand, because you can't lead by example unless you do that. So that's one thing that I think people have to be really clear on. But I don't remember where, but it's probably been at least 12 or 13 years that I was introduced to the concept of servant leadership. And I didn't realize how aligned I was going to be to the concept, because it just made such perfect sense. Because I'd always had leaders that were, let me tell you what to do, you do what I say, and then that's that. And I didn't realize that maybe they're more of a manager and not necessarily a leader, right? They're not inspiring. They're not making me see the vision. So it was. And again, I've grown, but I definitely was a rebel. My poor previous leaders that had me challenging them all the time. But I got introduced to servant leadership. And when I learned that the goal of a servant leader is really not to be about themselves. So your title no longer matters. It's about creating like this unity or this synergy amongst everybody in the team. And it's about motivating, empowering people, and just kind of inspiring them to do their best work. And as a servant leader, one of the things that I got to practice a lot was not to say, okay, here's my, and I say this is my disclaimer, because I know that there are probably leaders out here that are listening like, you can't do that. So I say this with this. I'd always have my goals, right? There would always be my goals or the strategic goals of the company. And that means that there are certain things that need to be done in my team to make sure that we could hit those. But as a as a standard leader, I would just tell people we got to hit these goals and that's it. But as a servant leader, I'm empowering people to become their best self so that they can reach whatever potential that they have. And I don't know what their potential is unless I empower them to try to find out. And so I would actually make a safe space for you to make a few mistakes because I have your back. And I would let my team know that, like, I want you to do this, but I got your back. So we won't fall. We won't, just die out here, trying to get this done. But it helped me know their skills. And so I started learning how to place people appropriately. This person's an amazing communicator. They're going to be great if I have them here. This person doesn't have communication skills, so I let them test it in this environment. I let them grow it in a safer space. And so I started playing around because I wanted them to feel empowered. And it's not even just delegating. It's just really letting them know that I believed and trusted in them so they would feel empowered to take their next step. And it's been amazing. I actually, that's probably the hardest thing about quitting corporate America for me was that I left my people behind. Like, that was the hardest thing because they're so impactful to me. But with that being said, you can't be empowering and loving your team and giving them this all the time, and which is why I put situational leadership. So depending on the situation, there may be times where I'd have to step in and take control just to make sure that we could get certain things done. But I tried to make that more like 10% of the time versus 90. It requires me to be proactive, to be a servant leadership, because I know that I still do have to reach and hit company goals. So now I have to think about how can I make sure we're hitting this while still giving them the opportunity to become motivated and empowered in who they are. And so it's a little bit more work, and it does take a bit more effort, but the results and the payout are amazing, especially as you see people grow. I had an employee, and I haven't been working as his leader for probably almost 2 years now. And to this day, I still get pictures of his children and his kids because he's like, I love you, I miss you, and I think he's great. But he was with the company for 9 years before he started working with me. And when he started working with me, he only wanted to be safe. His biggest thing was making sure that he wouldn't get fired or lose his job because he was so scared of layoffs. He was the breadwinner in his household. That's all he wanted to do is he wanted to be a good employee so that he didn't get laid off. But I knew that he could do more. I was like, I don't want you to only be known as the employee that can answer this question. And I guarantee you that if something were to happen, because I don't know if you're going to have layoffs or not, and this is pre-COVID even, so I don't know if there's going to be layoffs or not. Don't you think you'd have a better opportunity if you added more skills to your plate than if you didn't? And so I had to get him to buy in. And he's like, he never had a leader that helped him see that he could do something more before. He always just had leaders that were okay with him doing a great job at what he was currently doing. And I have another employee that has a bracelet. It says, "What would Diana do?" Because that's what they... I just thought it was hilarious. But he's like, whatever he's doing something or he's working, and they've all been moved up. They've all promoted. They've all gone to new roles. They all have new leaders. They all have seen different things. And that makes me happy to know that where they were keeping themselves stuck, intentionally keeping themselves stuck, now they see potential in so many other things, opportunities in so many other things, because I took the time to let them know I believed in them. And that's what servant leadership is about to me.
That little extra step. And, I think it relates back to what you were saying earlier about when you would speak on panels and you would do speeches and you would talk about being authentic. And if this isn't right for you, I mean, you're adding value to the company, to what you just said there, in that you're helping them realize their true potential and find and learn the skills to be able to elevate themselves. And I think if the company, if the corporation, the company, the business, whatever you want to call it, can recognize that in that individual, then they just have a more valuable individual.
Absolutely.
So I think that... And
they're more engaged. They would come to work just so pumped and ready to do anything and everything because they have this behind them. And you talk about the strengths. I laugh. Strength Finders is my favorite assessment. I love that assessment. I love the ELI assessment for different reasons, but I'm very much behind the Strength Finders philosophy of don't work to build up gaps. No, if you suck at it, no matter how hard you work, you're only going to get okay. But if you work to build up your strengths, these things that you are innately great at, then just imagine the potential of where you could go and what you could do. And so I always, with every employee that I've had or anybody I've mentored or anybody I coach, we do a core values exercise, we do a strength finders assessment, and we do an ELI assessment. And with those three things, we can figure out what the right decisions are for you in so many areas of your life. Oh, I want a promotion. Yeah, but you told me that it's important for you to be home every night because you've got 2 new kids and you want to make sure you can do this. But this role says that you'd be working 10 to 12-hour days. That doesn't align with the values that you have. And they're like, you know what, you're right, I don't want to do that. Versus them getting that job and being miserable and then bringing down the team because they're miserable at that job and not being productive because they're miserable. So I do think it helps an organization to go through this work because it makes sure that you have the right people in the right places.
And just to add to that point, and then they bring that home. And they bring that home, and then they have insert limiting beliefs of like, I'm not good enough at work. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough whatever. And now they're spiraling. So it's very important work. I'm glad you brought up that strength assessment too, because for me that was a big turning point for me. I didn't do a strength assessment, but I can recognize it in that Gary Vee talks a lot about it, about like focus on your strengths and not just hire somebody to do your weaknesses. He doesn't say it like that, but you get what I'm saying. And I started following him a lot, and he would say it over and over again. And I was just like, yeah, why? So for me, what ended up happening was I've spoken about it before where I'm dyslexic. I always wanted to be able to read, and I can read, but I could never read a book. And it was something that bothered me, but then I would just be like, whatever, But as I got older and got into self-development, I was like, I want to read. All these like leaders read. And so I started trying to read. And it wasn't until that Gary Vee video that I saw where he was just like, stop focusing on your weaknesses and focus on your strengths. And I was like, well, I'm not a good reader, like physical book reader, but I'm a good listener. I always did really well in school when I showed up to class and paid attention and was engaged in class. But if it was like a class that I had to go back and read and highlight the textbook, I highlighted every single word on the textbook, but it didn't do anything for me. So I realized I'm an audio learner and I'm a video learner. Like I learned through YouTube, I learned through audio. And so I started downloading audiobooks. And I've just chewed them up. Like I saw in your profile picture, in your headshot, you have the Grant Cardone's 10X book on your table. I read that book through Audible. I would have never picked it up to read it, but I read it through Audible, so focusing on your strengths changed my life. It really did. And that was before Merit. That was before even getting into IPEC or anything like that. So I think that's huge. Just to go back to this whole leadership piece, another thing that you brought up here, and I'm interested in the energy levels here, is what's really cool was, at IPEC, we talk about like when you learn the different energy levels of, victim all the way to collaborator and everything in between, the helper and everybody, you learn that none are good or bad. They all serve their purpose. And what I thought was an interesting correlation that you make with leadership is that you have these different levels of leadership, of servant, of situational, and none are good or bad. You just apply them differently, right?
It's so funny because when I started in IPEC, I started realizing how the concepts apply to everything.
That's it.
Like this applies to everything. Yes, everybody's like, well, I don't want to be the victim all the time. And sometimes people need that. Sometimes you need to be consoled. Sometimes you need to know that there are people that care about you. It draws people in to show you that they love you. Sometimes you need to be mad about something because that's how you take action or create change. And as you go up the energy levels, like sometimes you do need to tolerate and accept and find a way to move forward. So it just, there's always a situation. The thing goes back to what I said earlier. It's choice. You get to make the conscious choice of when you do what you do and why you do it. As long as you are in control of that and you're not just doing something because of fear, I'm going to do this because if I don't, then this will happen. I have to do this or I have to do that. That's when there's a problem. That's usually when you can see something's not right, something's not aligned. It should always be, you know what, I want to do this because I want this, or I want to do this because of this. This should always have, I'm really picky at it. My poor clients, I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you say? Whenever they say I have to, I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And so they always like, okay. You know, they have to adjust their language. I'm like, I'm just making sure. If that's what you feel, that's what you feel. But is that what you're choosing, or are you doing it because you're scared of something? Mm-hmm. And so it's a big difference. You have to just pick and choose what applies where.
I wish you were with me last night. I have a basketball league, so I run a basketball league, and I play in it as well. And I had a couple guys that were just shooting way too much on my team, and we went about 5 possessions without touching the ball, and I lost it. I was just like, but it was funny because you brought in a few things for me of like the past, right? So last season I was on a really good team. And I had really like 3 stars on the team. And so I didn't touch the ball much. And I was like, all right, that's fine. You know, whatever, you know, it is what it is. This season, things got switched up a little bit with the teams. And now we're in the first game and I'm not touching the ball again. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? And I'm a decent shooter, right? So I was like, nope, I made a conscious decision to let my team know in the first game of the season, I am not having this. Because last year I was like, I don't know if it was victim energy.
You let it go.
Yep.
You were 3. You were tolerating, compromising, yes, allowing.
Exactly, last season. And this season I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So it's funny because last night I get home, so I let them know I had a lot of explicits on the court, and then and then I subbed myself out to cool down. And so last night I was going through it in my mind, and I was just like, all right, what could I do differently? What could I have done differently? I was like, I'm running up and down the court, I'm playing hard defense, and I'm not touching it. All right, I could speak to the team, but that's not going to change them. That's not really going to change them. I was like, I could move myself off the team, but that's not going to solve my problem because I could just go to another team, and for some reason, so I was like, what's the best way that I could collaborate with my team? And I'm talking about old men's league basketball.
I love it. But it applies to every situation, whatever it is. You have to decide, and this is one of the things that I'm going through with a client now. You decide, okay, this is where you're at right now. You're kind of in level 3 energy, 2 or 3 energy. What would level 4 energy do? What would it be at level 5? What would it be at level 6? Okay, now which one do you want it to be? And then you make the choice. Right. And so it's a question I do when I go shopping, like at Target. Like sometimes I'll get frustrated. I'll get frustrated because they're not always in their right place. And somebody's like, oh, it's this aisle and it's not there. And I'll get mad. I'll be like, okay, what would I be doing if I was at a level 4 or 5? Like, how would I see this differently? And I do that even shopping. So sometimes it's just a matter of just taking the pause and asking yourself, because our default reactions are not always our best reactions. Yeah. And so that pause helps.
And for our listeners, since we are speaking a little IPEC language here, what we're talking about in these different energy levels is kind of like that, what we always hear, like the lose-lose mentality, the win-lose mentality, the win-win mentality, and we all win or only I win kind of mentality. You actually, if you would like to elaborate on that a little bit, I would love for you as an expert to share a little bit more insight.
Yeah, so IPEC, one of the things that they teach is that at the end of the day, we're all energy, and the way that we react and live is just based off of the energy that we have in the moment. And there's technically 7 levels. You can move through any of them at any time of the day, but it might be as simple as how you feel when you drop your phone versus the way you feel when you're around a bunch of like-minded people, like at a networking event or a conference or something. There's a difference in the energy that you feel. And so at level 1 and level 2, those are considered the energies that we use when we need them, but they're not necessarily the greatest for us to continue using long-term, only because eventually it'll wear us out, or it'll make us tired, or it'll make the people around us tired. If you're always angry, you might be okay with that, but the people that deal with you might not be okay with that. So it's more about like the overall impact of whatever that energy is. A level 3 energy means that you're compromising. You're seeing the silver lining. You're trying to move forward. You're not necessarily happy with what happened or what the result is, but you're just going to keep going forward. A level 4 is heart space. is what I like to call it. You're coming from a sense of service. So you're giving, you're trying to give and share with people. You're trying to help others. A level 5 energy is one where you see a lot of opportunities and things. So this is where you can say, maybe this happened this way, but I consider level 5 energy the equivalent of a growth mindset. So when you hear people talk about growth mindset, it's what I consider IPEX level 5 energy. Like, you see this, what did you learn? What could you do better? What could you do different? What other opportunities are there? That's level 5. Level 6 to me is that synergy. So how do we collaborate with others? We're all part of the big picture. How do we work together to make that big picture come to life? There's more than just this moment. Like, all of these parts play together. We're all puzzle pieces to match together. So that's what we call level 6. And then level 7, I'm not extremely religious, but I know that people get this reference. It's what I call the Jesus level. It's where you see the big picture while you're part of the small picture. So like, you'll know what's needed, and you're still playing your part. So you're creating and you're participating at the same time. And so that's kind of the levels, and each one of those levels is going to be equivalent to how you show up. So if you're feeling like a victim, then you're going to be feeling, you're going to show up apathetic, like, I don't care, whatever. If you're feeling level 2 energy, which is like more anger, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be mad. You're going to wonder why they did that. You're going to be complaining or blaming somebody for doing something because you're upset. So all of the levels of energy are based on how you feel, and how you feel creates how you act. And so I always like to say, I go a little bit deeper than IPEX says. I say your beliefs create your thoughts create your feelings, and your feelings create your actions, and your actions create your results. So the way that you act is what you get out of life. The way that, whether it's a success or whatever you think it might be, they all tie together. So what we do in IPEC and what a lot of energy coaches do is we try to get you back to the thought, because if you can address it here, then your actions are going to lead you to where you want to go.
Yeah. And I would also, so for the non-religious out there, that's the Wayne Dyer circle, right? Because
yes.
It is what it is, right?
It is what it is.
The Wayne Dyer, and I always think about his story, which kind of like is one of those chicken soup stories of like, he and I don't know if it's a true story or not, but it's a Wayne Dyer parable, to use the religious phrase, of like, I met a couple in New York, and they said, everybody around here is angry and miserable. So they moved to Florida. And when I saw them again, I said, how's Florida treating you? And they said, everybody around me is angry and miserable. And it's like, well, you're going to receive what you are, right? Or what you're looking for. Common
denominator here.
Yeah.
Let's think about this. It's very true. It's very true.
Because we know those areas have wonderful people.
As a person that's living in Florida,
that's what I was thinking about.
I get to see a lot of people from New York. I could tell you, when I came with my very Midwestern Pollyanna, hi, it wasn't always well received. But now I've worn people down because I didn't change, and so the people around me their energy started lifting around me. It's just what it is.
And that's what's so cool too, that I've learned with this coaching, is that when you can identify it in yourself and change it in yourself, you could then identify it in others. And we can't change others. But when we can identify it in others, then we don't personalize it as much on ourselves either.
Yes.
Right? That to me is huge, where I don't personalize as much. It's hard with family. It's hard with kids. It's hard with wives, spouses, and family members.
Wives is in multiple, Michael?
No, please. I am very happy with one. I don't want any more workload. No, she's wonderful. Devin's amazing. I want to talk about your coaching business, because we started off with this volcanic rock, this beautiful rock, and I really want to understand now how you were able to take your learnings and build this beautiful business that you have. And it's so clear on your website on like what you focus on. Like, you just have such clarity that I'm very interested in that, and how you were able to develop it. And you talked about this with Grant Cardone and the 10X coach and everything. So that's what I'm digging into here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. I was introduced to Grant Cardone probably, I'll say 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember what year it was, but I had a coworker who is, at the time, we weren't close, but we worked on the same floor. And they wanted to go to this conference. And I love conferences because I love learning. And so I was like, I'm listening to them asking everyone. They didn't have enough money to go. But there was a special where if you buy one ticket, you get one free. So they were trying to see if they could find somebody that would split the cost with them so that they could go to this conference. And they're asking everyone. And again, I'm not very close. I know them because we work, but we're not friends. But I'm hearing them speak about it, and I love conferences, and you could tell how desperate they want to go. Everybody's telling them no. And I was like, I'll go with you. And they're like, really, you will? And I was like, yes, I will. And so he was super excited. We split the cost of the ticket, and it just happens to be the 10X conference that's at the Marlins Stadium, which was his biggest event ever. So it's like 32,000 people. He jumped out of a plane. He skydived out of a plane to come to the stage. Like, it was ridiculous. I was sitting there like, what in the world is happening, or what is going on right now? And you know, throughout the event, I wasn't a big fan because I'm not very big on like a heavy sales pitch.
Right.
And everybody had a heavy sales pitch, except like one person, Pete Vargas. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he has a company called Advance Your Reach. He's very big about putting people's messages on stages and using stages to grow your business, et cetera, et cetera. So I signed up for his program. And that because Grant had purchased his company, they did a 50-50 partnership, Now I'm in the Grant Cardone ecosystem. And at the time, again, doing self-development, working on authenticity, trying to make sure that I'm moving forward. I'd already had my coaching certification at the time, so I know about my blocks, things of that nature. But one of the scary things about limiting beliefs is that sometimes you don't realize you have them until they come up, right? And so unless you're like doing the work to try to find them, you don't always know what they are. And Grant started being in my emails, and I'm looking at this every now and then, not really paying attention. But I don't know what happened. I started reading his emails a bit more, and he started talking about the 10X rule. And the concept about the 10X rule, that at the end of the day, most of us just think small. I didn't realize that was actually true of me also until I started reading that, because I'm thinking I'm doing such a great job working on myself and becoming a better person. And I was like, wow, I'm still thinking really small. Like, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I can ask for like a 10% raise instead of thinking that I could go somewhere that would pay me double my salary. Like just little things like that I don't realize until I started getting into his world. And so, very funny story. I love to tell this story because it's ridiculous. So it's time goes by. I start doing his challenges. I start reading his book. I start getting more involved in like his concepts. Haven't done a lot of his training or anything like that yet because I'm in corporate. So I didn't really care about the sales training. I didn't realize at the time that everything is a sale. The way we interact with each other, the way we talk, your relationship, everything is technically a sale, and sale is all about communication. And so it could have been helping me, but I didn't realize it at the time. And I slacked. I slacked off, not paying attention to it. I just totally ignored it because I had this belief that, that's not for me. And so I started doing these challenges. I bought a ticket to another growth conference, and it was the year of COVID. And the year after COVID. So 2021, I'm going through my depression. Remember, I had decided that I was going to leave, and I was coaching part-time. I all of a sudden had developed like anxiety, things that I'd never dealt with before. And I had been in the house. I was almost like, what is it called? Is it agoraphobic? I always forget the name, where you just you get the fear of leaving your home.
Agoraphobia.
Everything gets agoraphobia. Yeah, everything's being delivered. I didn't go outside. I don't even know what the sun or the sky looked like because the way my house was positioned, you couldn't even look out the window to see it like that. And so I bought the ticket though. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to this conference. I already paid for it. I'm going to go to this conference. About 45 minutes into the conference, anxiety just goes off the chain. Like, I'm sweating, I'm rocking. Poor people next to me, I'm sure they thought I was like about to die or something. Like, I'm just like, like trying to like get myself together. And I finally like, I need to just get some fresh air because I'm like feeling like I can't breathe. I wanted to lay down on the ground. That's how I felt. Like I felt really bad. So I get up, I go walk. I probably take 10 steps and I faint. So I guess I got my wish of laying down on the ground. And as I faint, I don't know this at the time. I realized it because of the scars and bruises I had when I got up. I hit chairs. So I fell into chairs and like I cut myself under my chin. I had a big bruise on my hip. All that to say, after they checked me over and are like, nothing's wrong. We don't know why this happened, blah, 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 blah. Do you want to go to the hospital? I was like, no, I'll go back to the conference. I go back in the conference, and the very first thing they're speaking about is Grant's licensee program and how to become certified to sell and train on his content and material. And I don't know what happened, but it was at that moment that I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm like, I don't know if it's because I hit my head or if it's because it didn't wake me up to clarity or did I go crazy? But I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to become a licensee because at the end of the day, I'm in corporate. I love business. I love helping businesses grow. I understand the concept of business operations, things of that nature. But the biggest thing that Grant does that he doesn't focus on it, that I realize is it's all your mindset. Whatever you're trying to do, whatever your targets are, the goals you want to hit in your business, it's all your mindset. And I realized that I had an opportunity to combine the IPEC coaching, getting to the core of who you are, who you're supposed to be, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, moving past those beliefs to now being able to realize your success. I realized I had the opportunity to merge the two together and create my own business. And so we talked about Obsidian meaning clarity. A lot of times people need clarity in their business because we start things because we might have been good at them before. Maybe you open a barbershop because you were a great barber. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's what you should have done or what you wanted to do or the way you're doing is the way you thought was going to align to your values and who you wanted and how you wanted your life to be. And so I do a lot of, let's take it back. What's the life that you wanted to have when you decided to be a business owner? What was the reason you decided to do it? What was coming to you? Where did it come from? Why did you decide? Who's your motivation? And then what did you want your everyday to look like? If you had your ideal, what's your everyday? So we do the ideal image, right? And then once they do their ideal image, then I help them 10X it. Because a lot of the times our limiting beliefs make us think smaller than we actually should. So some people I meet, like their business, they're like, oh, if I could just make $300,000 a year, that'd be perfect. And I was like, well, what's stopping you from making $3 million? And then we go through their beliefs they're holding them from thinking that they can do that because it's just a matter of thinking if they can achieve it. And then we reverse engineer, we do the math, and then we start working on coaching to get them there. And then I help them with all those blocks that are going to come up along the way so that they can implement this plan to reach the goal that they could be reaching. And once they start hitting these goals way past what they thought they could do, then they start dreaming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it all started with me realizing, like, again, I hit my head and I don't know what happened there, but I was like, there's an opportunity here. People want to make extra money. They want to grow their business. They want to build revenue, but there's something that's holding them back. And a lot of the times it's them. And so I realized I could merge the two together and Obsidian came to be.
That's so cool. It is a funny story, a funny, interesting story of you hitting. I wonder what Grant would think about, like, well, she hit her head and so she became a licensee.
And so she became a licensee. So they joke, and Grant knows this story because he loves the licensees. It's a big deal to him. So we meet him all the time. And so Grant says, like, I knocked sense into myself. That's what he says. Like, I knocked sense into myself, and that's why I decided to become a licensee.
He is a very high energy person.
He is.
We started talking about your reading and reading Oprah's bio when we were first talking, and what came out of that for you was some of the ideas or seeing somebody that looks like you, that feels like you, that's gone through your experience, seeing them reach such a high level left such a great positive impact on you. In the work that you're doing today, how are you leaving that impact for the young girls and the people in your community?
Yeah, I love helping other people. And so a couple years ago, everything's a funny story to me, Michael, by the way. So a couple years ago, I was dating someone that was a director for a nonprofit. And they were telling me about getting my twinkle, which is how you volunteer, how you help others, where you decide you want to make an impact for your community. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do to get my twinkle in my eye. That twinkle in the eye that I'm just like, oh, when I talk about this, you could just see the light shining. And I realized that I was passionate about people knowing that they could have that, like that freedom mentally, that they were at choice, that they could be free mentally, but also that you could be free financially. And so I started working with different nonprofits and a lot of smaller groups, just volunteering like, hey, can I come in? Can I speak to the youth about, you know, these mindsets and these beliefs and how they're not true and what they could actually dream of, and helping them see the possibilities. And so I started just kind of asking people if I could come talk. And when I used to work in corporate America, we had a really big relationship with like the Urban League and different schools in Broward County. And so I just started like tapping into the people that I knew from those events and those situations to ask like, hey, you guys need somebody to talk about this? Or, hey, you guys need this? And I love kids and kids love me. And so I'd get asked back and I'd get asked again. And now people that know me know that I'm willing to like support or help. So I've spoken to church groups. I've spoken to domestic shelters. I've spoken to different high schools, and I'm happy to do it. And I try to get them all behind the concept of just kind of continuously mastering themselves, because it's all about our self-leadership, right? Because once you learn how to lead yourself, then you're going to have success in whatever area of life you want to go into. It doesn't have to be business. It could be anything, but you have to learn how to master yourself first. And so that's really the core of what I talk about. But I always leave them with a little Grant, because Grant has this cute little booklet, How to Be a Millionaire. And I always leave them, because everybody wants to know about money. They can't. I tell them that you won't make the success that you'd like to in trying to become a millionaire until you address these mindset issues first. So then we kind of work into, now what would stop you from thinking that you could have this much, and what would stop you from doing the work and taking the effort that it would, doing the effort that it took to get here. And it's a fun conversation, and I just like seeing people's eyes open to the possibility that they can do more and that they can be more than they thought they could be.
And you have such a story that I'm sure resonates with them of just climbing out of your circumstance and like you said, addressing yourself and leading yourself down the path of success, and whatever success looked like for you at the time, whatever that was, like you said, whether it's financial.
They never believe me, Michael. They never believe me. Everyone that I meet, especially the children, they all like, no, you grew up like this. They have their assumptions about the way that I grew up because of how I show myself today. And I'm like, no, if you saw how I grew up. So it's always a fight to get them to believe me. And once they're really like, really? 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 I can see the same thing that Oprah and all the books did for me. Like, okay, there is something else possible. I could do something different. I see that happen in them, and it's a great thing to watch.
But what a great compliment to you when they don't believe you, because it's showing how much you're truly living in that. That's your truth of who you are today. We work so hard on transforming ourselves. I did that for myself, the same thing. And you're right, because people will say to me, "Oh, Michael, it's having a positive mindset comes so easy to you," or whatever. And I'm like, No, I read affirmation cards. I have affirmation cards, I am cards all over my desk. And trust me, during module 1, I rewrote all my I am cards. I have them all over my house. Like my girls see them. They're all over my house. They're on mirrors. They're on the front door.
I have them scheduled on my phone as like alerts to come up and remind me, so I can be like, I wake up to them. I go to sleep to them. Like, yeah, it's not easy. It's a choice.
It's a choice, 100%. But you're living in that choice, which brings us to your mindset today. Where's it at? What are you doing to keep this healthy mindset? You just mentioned you have these apps. I know that you're doing other self-work on yourself today.
Yes, I think that I'll say this because I don't think people appreciate how much coaches appreciate their clients. My clients help me a lot because as you grow and learn, I grow and learn with you. And so that I just want people to know that if you have a coach, trust me that they love you because they're getting something out of coaching you just like you get something from being coached by them. But I'm still a book reader. So I'm always reading something. I read very fast, and it's interesting because you talk about play to your strengths. So everyone's always like, oh, you should listen to audibles while you're out driving or while you're out doing this. I can't. I just cannot listen to an audible book to save my life. I've never finished one ever because I'll start listening, and I think that they read too slow because I read faster than they talk. And I think that I don't always like their voices. I'll be like, I don't like the way this person's.
The voice is kind of like sometimes like I'll test out a book that I want to read and I'm like, I don't know. Like, to be honest, the Daily Stoic, like I really wanted to download his book and I like watching him in clips, but I can't have him narrate the whole book to me. In terms of the speed, I just listen to it at like 1 times 10 or something like that. So you can speed it up.
See, that's smart. And I just am like, I'll stick with the paperback or the hardcover because I just struggle. I struggle with
But that's
Audible.
good. You can read though. That's wonderful. You don't need technology to help you with that. That's nice.
Well, it's funny you mentioned being dyslexic. My niece is dyslexic, and it's the same thing. Like we try to find like, well, you don't have to do it the same way everybody else is doing it. Like, what's another option where you still can get what you want to get out of it? And so I applaud you for recognizing, like, I don't need to copy this. I need to do my thing and find my success. So, I read a lot. I definitely schedule on my phone to remind me, like, and I'll be like, oh, yeah. Because sometimes you just don't think about it, and it's just that mental reminder. So I have scheduled times that I remind myself. I wake up to a meditation. It's like a morning meditation, so it's very slow, and then it brings me into my affirmations. I'm not an aggressive affirmation person. So people that love the ones like, and do this and do that, I'm not an aggressive affirmation person. But I appreciate them because I know how it hypes other people up. So I know who to recommend it to and who not. But I'll listen to just some gentle affirmations. I do a lot of frequencies. So like listening to the frequencies while I'm thinking things through. I'll listen to Hertz frequencies. And I don't know, there's just so much. I meditate. I do yoga. I just try to go out and let the sun shine on me, which is a great thing about living in Florida. I'll just be like, and whatever I can do to just kind of keep me in that better frame of mind, which has been even more interesting since I suffered from depression, because it's a good thing and a bad thing, but I'm more sensitive to my own emotions and the emotions of others in a way that I never was before. And that vulnerability has also opened up like some more just self-reflection. I do shadow work. I'm not a big journaler. I like writing. I don't like journaling. I've never been able to keep a diary to save my life, but I'll speak. I'll speak about it. So I'll read the prompt and then I'll record myself saying something. I'll just sit and I'll talk and I'll be like, actually I think this and I think that and I think that, and I'll look at it later. But yeah, so whatever works for you, you just have to find, and everything doesn't work the same day. I don't do all of this in one day. I do different things, different times, different days. So
I'm interested. What's this app that you do for journaling that with the prompts? Because I want this.
So I don't use an app for journaling. I have books that have the journaling prompt, and it'll say like this. But if you want an app that does have some prompts, my favorite app is called The Pattern. The Pattern. And yes. And it's about your patterns in life, your timings, like where you are, what might be holding you back and bringing you forward. It's kind of weird. It's similar. I'll say it's like horoscope on steroids because it's not really based on your horoscope, but it does take into account like when you were born, but it has on there a question of the day. And in that question of the day, it asks you, what was the thing that had the most impact on your life? Or who was the person that, like, it just asks you these questions. And some of them are shadow work questions, like, what's the biggest thing about yourself that you wanted to change or something? And then some of them are very positive, like, who motivates you the most? So I love the questions that they have.
It's like my intake form. So are you telling me I should just fill out my intake form and I'll be fine?
You'll be fine.
I love.
And by the way, I just want to say you had the most in-depth intake form I've ever done before. But I thought it was so great. I was like, this is so cool that he's like really digging into all of this now instead of necessarily like on the show, because it makes me think. I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? When I was growing up and this happened here and this transformation here. So I love it.
Thank you. Everybody responds differently to it. Some people take it as like therapeutic, like you may have in what you're saying and sharing. And then some people just put a couple little lines, one-liners. Both work really well because I know the person that gives me like one line is probably going to elaborate on it some more, or at least that's the faith I have in them. And then when you give me this, you just give me like tremendous content, which I really, really am happy to be able to dig into with you. So I kind of just want to conclude this with one thing that you left out of one of the practices that you do that you wrote, which I think is one of the most important. I'm gonna put this as my own thing here of the 2 G's. I'm gonna call it the 2 G's. One is gratitude, and then the other one is giving yourself grace. Yeah, and you said that that's like so important.
I think that we forget, and it's so funny because we're so much more compassionate to somebody else than we are to ourselves. And if somebody makes a mistake, or even in the business environment, if somebody acts up at work, you don't always, unless they did something like ridiculously egregious, you don't just fire them, right? Usually you'll speak to them first, right? And then maybe you'll write them up. And then maybe you'll put them on probation. And then maybe you'll have a conversation. But you're giving them all these opportunities and chances to make a correction. And we don't give ourselves that. We assume that we are supposed to be perfect and do everything right the very first time. And we don't give ourselves grace in the room and space to learn, to grow, to make a mistake, to be okay with making a mistake. I mean, we don't know we're making a mistake when we do it at the time. We're thinking we're doing the right thing. Hindsight's 20/20, right? So just giving yourself the grace as you move through life to say, you know what? What did somebody call it? I don't even know. I'm not going to remember. I'm going to text it to you later. But the way that they said the word is something like they're flawless or something. I'm flawful. They're full of flaws. And I think we all are. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to accept that and be okay with it so that we can move forward and figure out what's next and what else we can do, and how else we can achieve, and how else we can make an impact. Because if we don't allow those flaws to be part of our DNA, and we only think we can be perfect, then we're being selfish, because we're robbing somebody from the truth of ourselves. And that robs them from the truth of themselves, because we mimic, we copy.
Well said. Yeah, grace to me, when I learned it, it was like the most amazing thing for me to be able to forgive myself for my mistakes, for my past mistakes, for anything I've done. It's just really amazing. This has been so awesome. I knew we were going to have so much fun when I knew you were IPEC. I was like trying to lead up to it. I was like, well, I gotta get some of this history stuff out of the way. I can't wait.
You definitely blew my mind with that. I was like, wait, did you just say Gale?
I wrote down a couple notes of how I might introduce it. I was waiting to see which way I would introduce it. So I've had so much fun with you, and you're creating such an impact. You're such a wonderful example. I can't say anything more positive about you. Your website is beautifully done. The work that you do, your story is so inspiring, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show today. I appreciate that. Any last messages that you'd like to share?
I just want to share a thank you to you. People wouldn't know of other people. You're allowing people's messages to be heard, their voices to be heard, and there's going to be an impact to somebody. You're making an impact to somebody with everything that you do. So I just want to say thank you, and that I appreciate you doing this.
You're very welcome, and thank you as well. And it'll be in the show notes, but do you have any handles or links or email addresses that you want to share?
Yes. I am at It's Diana Renee on all social media platforms, and my website is otransforms.com. So come visit, check me out, schedule time to do a free session. I like to do a little demo coaching for people that don't know what it's like or what it feels like to have an iPet coach. We always like to give a free example. So come on to the website, schedule some time with me, and we'll show you what that looks like.
Awesome. That's
at It's Diana Renee.
At It's Diana Renee. It's Diana Renee. Perfect. And that'll be in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Speak soon.
You too. Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.